Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. This is Cody here to talk about some Marvel with you tonight with Dave. Wait, you're not Dave.
Uh, I tried.
What is happening here?
I mean, one man can only do so much, and this one man cannot be Dave.
Fair enough. Justin's with me this week, and we're talking about some Marvel for realsies, though. We're gonna take a look at the new show on Disney Plus, Echo, that came out. Actually ended a little bit ago as well, but for reasons, what we'll discuss, we ended up doing a little review on this one. And we'll get started today just by asking Justin what the heck he's been up to lately. What's the weather up there? You guys got snow or is it flooding like here?
We have snow at the moment. I don't know if that's going to last through the weekend, considering the forecast doesn't call for it to get below like 35 degrees
Hmm.
for the next 5 days. Um, yeah, we got dumped on after Christmas. Had a good like foot and a half or so. It seemed like it was going to stick around. And this week, it's gone from half the sidewalks that I travel on being, very hard to get through to being bare concrete. And that's just within a span of a couple of days. It's ridiculously unseasonably warm up here, and no flooding yet that I'm aware of, at least not in my house. But sorry to hear you're dealing with some down there.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's not like overly bad, but we did get a lot of snow in a short period and then it was basically 36, 37 around here. And it has been, I mean, the fields around us and everything probably have a good 3, 4, 5 inches, I would say. Like there's still some little tiny banks, but a lot of water.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been walking through soup on the way to work pretty much lately, and it's not fun. Um, Aside from that, I've been checking out a few games. I've jumped on the bandwagon that is the internet sensation of Pal World, the legally distinct, not Pokemon.
There you go.
It doesn't, and it really doesn't play anything like Pokemon. Like I'm not the biggest fan of that franchise. I dabbled in a few of the earlier games, but this is much more of a survival kind of setup. I mean, yes, the monsters look pretty similar to their Pokemon counterparts at times, but the gameplay itself is very different. It's not turn-based, it's real time. Well, let me just discuss like what happened on my first day in game. So you wake up on an island, you don't know quite where you are, how you got there, but basically you kind of wander around until with a little objective prompts telling you like build this, or capture three of these, that sort of thing. So I build a little workbench, I make a few basic tools, and the next thing is build the equivalent of a Pokeball. And I don't have some of the stuff I need for that. So
Okay.
I look around a bit and I see down, way, way down on a beach, that's probably like 60, 70 feet down below me. I see this little sparkly blue outcropping of rocks. I'm like, maybe that's what I need, because the thing I need to make is blue. And so I start jumping my way down there and eventually pretty much get to it. And then I realize I have no way back up. You can climb, there's a climbing mechanic, but I don't have the stamina to reach back where I was. So I'm in this place I'm probably not supposed to be. And I'm like, well, at least I can, punch this rock with my fists and maybe get some stuff out of it. Then the sun starts going down and it says, you're cold. And my health starts dropping. I'm like, oh crap. The little thing on the screen says, making a torch can stave off some of the cold. So I look through my recipes and it's like, you need a workbench to make a torch. My workbench is 70 feet above me. So I go and I start like punching trees, trying to get more wood so I can make a bench, punching more trees so I can build a torch and not freeze to death. Um, I ended up starting a riot with the pals, the little Pokemon guys, because I captured one. I had him following me around. I didn't realize I'd only made one ball. So I went to go trap another one and tried to throw a ball and had nothing. So it tried to attack me, missed, hit a different pal. That one got into the fray, and then like my little chicken guy is trying to fight them off. It was a brawl, and it was fantastic. But yeah, I'm enjoying my time with that so far. Really fun, really quirky game. I haven't gotten into the slave labor part of it yet. Where you make assembly lines and force them to do your bidding, but we'll see how that goes.
Wow.
I'm having a good time. Um, Other than that, the other game I've been checking out, quicker description of this one, Last Epoch. And this is the game that I gather Diablo 4 was supposed to be.
Mhm.
It's half the price, made by a studio that's like a tenth the size. It's great. It's polished. It's only in early access. Comes out next month on Steam. I'm not sure about other platforms, but it already feels like a very complete game. There's 5 classes to start with. Those break down into like each one has 3 subclasses, so functionally 15 different character types you can play around with. Instead of skill trees, you do get skills, but each skill has a tree attached to it. So you could have like, say you're a wizard, and you decide your lightning bolt is like your bread and butter. You can have that depending on how you specialize. You could have it become chain lightning. You could have it become like a channeled lightning spell. So you hold it down and it just does continual damage. You could change the damage type to like ice or fire if you wanted to like fiddle with that a bit. And each skill in the game for each class has this branching tree attached to
Okay,
it. I don't think I've seen this level of character customization in a game like this before.
that's
And
cool.
that game it's a blast. It's half the price of Diablo 4, a much better game. I may have mentioned it, but if I didn't, you can play it offline. You don't need to be continually connected to the internet to play a single player game.
That's awesome.
Uh, Highly recommended. Uh, Jury's still out on Pal World, but Last Epoch, chef's kiss. Great game.
Are the spells breakable? I'm just joking.
um, oh, you. But on that note, what's been new on your side of things?
um, I haven't played too much recently as far as video games, but I have been watching a little bit of TV here and there. We, I think, are on I think the last episode. There might be 2 left of Percy Jackson, whatever the first season is called, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, I think the TV show is called. Um, and it's been pretty good. I mean, it stars, primarily 3 kids or teenagers, I guess, as the main actors and actresses, and it's for what it is, it's actually pretty good. Story's been interesting. My one qualm I will say is I know a lot of students that I've had in school have like kind of touted like how much they've learned about Greek mythology through those book series, but the show kind of goes, maybe the books do too, but they will like just like name drop a god that's like more obscure than like, I really know probably, and just kind of continue on with the sentence as if we're supposed to like know who that is. And I'm like, I don't know if who is that again now? It was like one of the 4 names in this episode you said with like a C, but I don't know who it was. So there's been a little bit of that, but overall it's been pretty good. And yeah, so we're through 6. I forget if there's 7 in the first season,
Okay.
or 8, but we're close to the end of that. And then I thought I would be able to provide a 10-second review on a show Brett mentioned a while back, which was Obliterated on Netflix, which I was watching a couple episodes of here and there as the week went on, but actually, just due to scheduling, had to pause the show with like 20 minutes left in the last episode. So I actually haven't seen how it all plays out.
Oh,
I can pretty much guess how it plays out based on the tone in that show and what's been happening with the ridiculous plot. But I could at least say enough that Brett was on the money. If you want a kind of humorous, like maybe late 90s, early 2000s comedy style vibe with like lots of drugs and sex references and a ton of strong language, some nudity, lots of graphic violence. Like it is a fun throwback, and I'm really surprised that it's on Netflix to be quite honest. Like it feels like it was made then, but it looks
oh,
like it was made now. So
that sounds
it
pretty
is
cool.
fun. It is pretty fun, pretty fun show, I gotta say. And the characters, there's like 6 or 7 in the main cast, and they're all memorable enough. Like it's a fun ride. So
Cool.
soft recommendation on that, barring the 20 minutes being a terrible finale or something happening here. But okay, well, let's jump into tonight's episode. This is on Echo, the TV show, not the little Amazon product you can buy, but this is on the TV show, which I have a hard time Googling because of the Amazon product, but
Oh,
Echo
that's
on Disney Plus. This is I'll just say, I guess in the preset here, this is kind of a character that we saw originally in Daredevil, not Daredevil, Hawkeye.
okay.
There we go. As I mean, one of the like 5 or 6 bigger characters in that show, but by no means a big character in that show.
Mhm.
Um, and she was kind of given a green light for an episode or an episodic TV show of her own afterwards by Marvel, which really did feel like an odd choice, I have to say, at the time, because it was not a character that felt overly special or necessary in that show. So when they were like, we're going to branch out and even give this character their own show, I was kind of like, why are we doing this?
Hmm.
Um, which is basically the same feeling I have as far as the upcoming Agatha TV show from WandaVision as well, although that character was delightful and sang. So there's that. But I don't know why we need that show either. So unless they're going to present something new in that one, we'll see what comes out of it. But one of the reasons we actually are a couple weeks late on reviewing this one is there was, I think, like the first three episodes, there's only five episodes to this. The first three came out, and I believe Disney put a, whatever the technical term is, it's escaping me now, but basically they had the media only be able to review the first three episodes, I think.
Oh, an embargo.
There you go.
Yep.
And then they released the second two after that. And so if you search for reviews of this show online, you actually find a lot that are split, like the first three and then this fourth and fifth, or there's some that just came out afterwards and had it. And it was a show I was obviously going to watch as Marvel guy here. And Justin came along on the ride with this one for us. But one of the interesting things about this one is we were mentioning in our group chat is if you look at the review headlines, okay, so I'm on Google right now, one of my
Oh no.
screens. Well, this is what's interesting about this show. And all I typed in was Marvel Echo Review, those three words, okay, and then I hit
Hmm.
enter. And going through here and subtracting any entry that comes up that is like a message board or random Yahoo user who put something on there, the
Hmm.
headlines read Echo is damn good, like almost too good for Marvel. Echo Marvel tries to have it both ways. Echo Review, the bloodiest show ever seen on Disney Plus. Marvel Studios' first TVMA series hits hard.
Hmm.
Echo is one of Marvel's best TV shows in years. Marvel's Echo Review, the good, the bad, and the Disney. And Echo Disney Plus Review, another Marvel misfire. And that's just like the top seven or eight. In
Oof.
reverse order, that was Variety, Forbes, Rolling Stone, The Verge, The Guardian, The New York Times, and another website.
Hmm.
So one thing that really intrigued me to actually do a review episode on this was just the wide spectrum of responses this seems to be getting from people from like, this is complete trash to this was the best thing they've done in a long time. And I'm excited to have Justin here with me as the co-host tonight because he did not, to my knowledge, at least since I last
Hmm.
spoke to him, do something that I did years ago with
Watch
regards
Hawkeye.
to some viewing habits. So we'll get to that in a bit here, but we'll see how we both felt about this show
Yeah.
as we get into this. So there's that. Okay, let's see. So let's start with Hmm. Let's start with maybe what. Well, how about this? Can I just do like a real quick summary of what's going on here?
Sure. Go
I'm
for it.
not gonna. I will read this. I'm just going to Wikipedia to steal the two. Let's see. Oh, this is the flashbacks and the flash forwards. That's gonna take too long. We don't want to do that. But essentially here, let me pull up this alternate one here. We have a couple different episodes here with a plot that is spanning both the present and also the past in many ways, which
Mhm.
is one of the central things we can talk about as this goes on. But here's this, I'm going to go over to IMDb. They have, coincidentally, well, this is weird. It says all five episodes are top rated, although their ratings range from 6 stars up to 7.2 stars. So I'm not sure what that means exactly,
Oh,
but seems kind of a mixed message. So
yeah.
episode one, we have episode one's called Chafa. It says young Maya Lopez, who is Echo, leaves her hometown of Tamaha, Oklahoma, following her mother's death and moves to New York City, where Wilson Fisk, better known as Kingpin, I guess, raises her to be a ruthless assassin. Upon learning that Fisk had her father killed, Maya shoots him and flees. Episode two was called Loak. Maya enlists her disapproving family to help take down Fisk's army while experiencing strange visions. Episode three is called Tuklo. Maya learns the meaning of collateral damage when Fisk's army arrives in Tamaha. Episode 4 is called Taloa. Maya finds herself at a crossroads as she faces the shadows of her past and contemplates her future. And then episode 5, the lives, it's just called Maya. The lives of Maya's family hang in balance when Fisk's army invade the Choctaw Nation powwow. So none of that has any spoilers, I should point out as well. We will be going into some spoilery stuff here today as well. So if you haven't seen the show yet, definitely want to make sure you get a chance to go over to Disney Plus and do that before we get into the weeds here, as it were. So Justin, let me start with you. I want to ask,
Sure.
what kind of expectations did you have for this character on screen, / was this a show you were even remotely interested in prior to this discussion of maybe doing this?
Oh, the funny thing on that, I've always had kind of a soft spot for the for lack of a better term, the B-list characters, the overlooked characters, the ones that are kind of that don't get their time in the spotlight very often. Back when I was still reading comics, I would often pick up kind of the oddball series that would come out in hopes that maybe they'd be an interesting and different take on whatever events were going on in Marvel or DC or whatever. And I often found those stories to be the most interesting. I didn't really know a ton about Echo the character heading into this. Aside from I knew she had been in Hawkeye, which in my mind painted her as a very like street level sort of character, which I thought would be a good direction for Marvel to go in, because not everything needs to be a giant cosmic cataclysmic world ending event. And I did a little reading, just to get a feel for who she is in the comics. Assassin has kind of taskmaster like abilities to learn from the motions of who she's fighting, and adapt to their fighting style. And I thought, okay, this could be a really cool, different sort of focus for a series or something else going on, or who knows. So I was heading into this, I was expecting a darker, kind of gritty, street level hero story. Whether or not the show provided what I expected, we can touch on that later. But that was what I went in hoping for.
Yeah. And remind me, you did or did not see Hawkeye? I forget which ones you've
I
seen.
did not.
Did not see
So
Hawkeye. Okay.
yes, yeah.
Um, I enjoyed that one quite a bit, but again, like I said, she was more or less just like a henchman at some point in the series to Kingpin. She's not the star or even the top. Probably not. Probably honestly not even the top like 5 or 6 people in the show, I would say. So she's kind of a minor character in that, which again was kind of why I was like, why are we making a show on this person? She was interesting in that show, I will say, though, because we did get to see that she was both a deaf character and also an amputee, which are two things I don't know that we've seen either, though we did. I think we might have seen maybe Makari in the Eternals that ran super fast. She might have been deaf, I believe.
Mm.
I think she did sign language also, now that I just thought of that, but I don't think we've seen an amputated hero in.
Well, there's Winter Soldier. I mean, he did get a replacement arm, but
Yeah,
then again, Echo gets a
that's
replacement
true, I
leg.
guess.
So yeah,
Okay. That's
yeah,
true. So maybe we're kind of coming at the same things from different sides here, or different takes on the same
yeah.
veins, if you will. But there was enough interesting about the character in Hawkeye that she at least stood out as a character, I will say. She was if not a scene stealer, a scene disruptor, because you had to pause kind of what your viewing was at the moment and be like, wait, who is this? And why is this different than what I'm used to? Which I always think is a good thing.
Hmm.
So again, when we got to this show, I was really curious how that character and actress Alaqua Cox as a lead would handle this show centered around that character. And really, I mean, would you agree with this statement? Like, we have some interesting things here which are different. I mentioned already that she is deaf, and there's a heavy use of sign language in this show, which, again, you as the viewer, if you don't know sign language, you were kind of reliant on subtitles.
Mhm.
And there were moments in this show that were like awkwardly silent for a long time, or I should say silent for an awkward amount of time.
Hmm.
And those
Including fight
definitely,
sequences.
yeah, and those definitely
Yeah.
stood out to me of like, like we have two characters signing back and forth, but it's like a 4-minute scene. That's a lot to process as somebody who doesn't typically use those skills. You know what I mean? Not that we don't read, and I don't know sign language though, but
Mhm.
so
I know there, in since the show came out, there was a lot of talk about that aspect of the show online, a lot of criticism, saying that it slowed things down or that it made it a chore to sit through. Um, I didn't entirely feel that way. I mean, I then again, I watch a lot of
okay,
movies with subtitles and stuff anyway.
yeah, good
So
point.
maybe I'm coming at it from a different angle. But I felt it was a different approach. I felt it illustrated, the world as seen through the eyes of the main character in a way that you might not get otherwise. Um, and even when the sound like cuts out and you're seeing like a fight scene that's entirely silent, I didn't hate that as much as a lot of people did.
Okay,
I felt it's kind of like, if you're seeing a fight scene and all of a sudden the people fighting, get knocked off a bridge and they're underwater. Sound cuts off during that. It's just a different way of framing, a different way of presenting the scene. I didn't feel it's hurt things as much as a lot of reviewers seem to have uh, had the opinion of.
awesome.
So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it was, I will say for my family, because we watched this together as a family again, despite its TVMA rating, which we'll talk about in a bit here. But it was interesting because my son was kind of like, yeah, sometimes I read the subtitles, sometimes I don't. Like, I'm just kind of watching the scene, what's going on. And I was like, you're missing a lot of the story then, with what's going on. And then my wife prefers basically to watch subtitles almost exclusively now, and I still can't stand them. I try. It's so hard for me though, because it
Oh,
just distracts me and I just read. I can't focus on both. I don't know if that's like my thing or what, but to her, this one was very challenging to engage with, like um keeping up with the reading, as much as she
mm,
had to. Um, and because there was no, volume, no sounds on screen as well, like that was the sole interpretation of like how to react to what was happening here. So I think it was a struggle's not the right word, but it was more challenging to her, I think, than most things that we would watch. So just
sure.
something to think about if you're out there and you haven't made up your mind on this one yet.
Mhm,
So we have the kind of the deaf hero angle or anti-hero, maybe depending. We
mhm,
have the amputee angle, which does get played up a little bit, as far as the family gets involved a little bit, and we get some legs that are being made for Maya as the show goes on. And then like the
mhm,
third big leg for this one, I really thought, well, it was kind of four, I think. Those two
mhm,
kind of made it feel a little bit different, but one of the biggest ones in this series was the use of the native culture. So, talk to
mhm.
me a little bit about what you thought of how that was incorporated into the show, and if you thought there was too much of it, not enough, or if it worked in general.
Um, I liked the inclusion for the most part. Like starting it out with the what I assume is the Choctaw like creation story. I thought that was an interesting way to sort of frame, the culture, frame how the story is going to approach certain things. And it was different. It was something I wasn't familiar with. I thought that was neat. Um, Incorporating that into giving my should I talk about the change
Yeah,
they
go
made to
ahead.
her?
You can,
Okay,
you can.
incorporating that into giving Maya powers, especially when, from what I understand anyway, she didn't have powers aside from the eidetic memory thing in the comic book. That felt weird to me. Like they made changes they didn't necessarily need to, considering what little I know about her from the comics makes her already seem like kind of a badass. I don't know if she needed like glowy mind tapping. Oh, we'll get to exactly what she uses the powers for, but
Yeah.
it felt. I mentioned I went into this expecting like a more down to earth street level kind of hero. I did not get that by the end. So,
Mm.
and that's a big reason why. But I am jumping the gun a little bit, so we can come back to that.
Yeah, and that's fine. We definitely got, I would say, a new location with this, which is kind of a rural, very rural Oklahoma area for the town where her family is from. We definitely had a lot of imagery and some sounds and maybe even some music of Choctaw culture, which is, again, pretty cool. I think Marvel's getting pretty far down with representation here, which I think is great still that they're finding more groups that they can add into these shows. So long as they're not like, we don't have a Jamaican, we need to check the box. But they've mostly made them feel, yeah, man, like they're natural, it seems like. So hopefully this felt that way as well. But there was a lot of like their style of living and their history and their ancestors and other things of that nature that was kind of sprinkled throughout the series.
Mhm.
And I thought that was one thing they actually did fairly well was be consistent with like what it meant to be Choctaw in the past and also in the present, which we could get into a whole social commentary here as far as like you see these people who were, proud warriors in one generation that we looked at, and like they're just kind of living in like these really rurally shacks in the middle of Oklahoma, and they get like one festival a year to like have anybody else in the community like give a damn about who they are and to come out and celebrate,
Yeah.
their traditions. So there's that. And then the last pillar, I guess I'll put as a label on this is I think the show really dealt a lot with family,
Mhm.
whether that was dealt well or not, we can talk about, but there definitely was like elements of who you are and who makes you who and how the older generations to you have, kind of in some way shaped who you become and what you count on your family for, what's appropriate to ask your family for help with,
Mhm.
do you endanger your family if it's something that you need help with, or would they just automatically do it because it would help you with something? But definitely a lot of family in this also, I would say.
Yeah, which I mean is always a good solid focus for any story. I mean, because there's a lot of different layers you could tap into with regards to family. You know, whether they work well together, whether they're dysfunctional, how the history behind the various members and stuff. It's always fertile ground for storytelling. And yeah, I think trying to incorporate that into a show is never a bad thing.
Yeah. I would agree. So let's talk about, well, let's go to plot maybe. So
Okay.
why don't we start with
Can we start with episode one? I mean, just the
absolutely.
okay, because the thing I've heard about this, and having not seen Hawkeye, I can only go based on what I've heard and read. So I gather the first episode is largely a recap of stuff that happened in Hawkeye. Is that true?
This is true. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so a couple things in this one, which I definitely wanted to get your take on at least one of these because I saw it mentioned
Mhm.
um, on a few websites. But we do get a very brief, like flashback cameo almost, but like you're saying, they're retelling the story essentially from that show, just maybe like even more in her eyes than we did in the first TV show Hawkeye.
Mhm.
So we do get like a little tiny bit of her seeing like Clint Hawkeye in his Ronin uniform and like kind of going around being a badass, just ripping people apart, killing people.
Mhm.
Which he does have some flashbacks in Hawkeye with that, and then also, if I recall correctly, somebody later was using that costume and like framing him essentially.
Okay.
But it is actually him that kills the person that was in her family. So she has the grudge, and I think that was why she was like kind of pseudo against him as well in Kingpin, without the whole story of Kingpin being explained in that show, because that was not. She was just like a
Okay.
henchman essentially who was working as one of his like thugs, basically.
Okay.
The other thing in the first episode that I have seen on a lot of websites as well is there is a fight scene with Daredevil. And I definitely want to touch on that one for a few minutes here because I want to hear what you have to say, first of all, on how that character was used in this show, and then also talk about the actual fight scene itself. But one of the criticisms was, again, if you didn't watch other Marvel stuff or hadn't seen the old Daredevil TV show, because this is a very, did you watch She-Hulk or not?
Yes.
This is a very different Daredevil than we got in She-Hulk. This is like the old school Netflix Daredevil, um,
Okay.
who is just, John Wick hand to hand, volume 7 here.
Mhm.
And they don't say who he is. at any point in this show. His name is never mentioned once.
Oh,
Nor is it ever said once in the show to Kingpin, like, hey, I fought I fought
Daredevil.
Daredevil.
Mhm.
Like, he's just there for that fight scene, which ties in with really nothing else in the show. And then this, I don't know if that's supposed to be like a little teaser for like his show that eventually he's going to get on Disney Plus eventually here, or what. But did it bother you that like he just popped in and did the fight and then was never seen again?
Kinda. It did feel like a marketing stunt, especially because I want to say in what advertisement I saw leading up to when this came out, it seemed like they leaned pretty heavily into Daredevil being a part of it. And for him to just show up for like a 2 minute long scene or however long it
Yeah.
was, do a fight, and then leave and never be mentioned again. Never. Well, I mean, he's mentioned in passing, but not by name. Never show up again. Never have an influence on events. It felt not. I'm trying to think of the right term because fan servicey isn't the right term. It fits to an extent, but it felt cheap, I guess. Like they put him in to get people hyped up and excited, and then essentially yanked the rug out from under them, and it's like, oh, that's all you're getting. Be happy. And then now, which it's fair to an extent. It's not his show. It's
Yeah.
it's Echo's show, but I don't know if he needed to be there. Yes, he is the classic foil to Kingpin. So that makes a bit of sense, but it didn't feel like it contributed a lot. So it was a decent fight, I
Yeah,
thought. I
that's
mean,
the
so
second part I
so
was going to ask you. Yeah, what did you think of the actual fight choreography in the like one shot?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was. I enjoyed it. I mean, they worked in her prosthetic leg in a couple of scenes, like where he hits her with the baton, expecting her to like crumple, and it's just like a clang. And so I felt like they incorporated the aspects of both of each of the fighters fairly well. And it was one of the better fight scenes in the show, I think. And the
Yes.
the brawl leading up to it. Um, but that said, I do think they also front loaded a lot of the fights, but we can get to that. Um, so they didn't utilize him well, but I mean, it was entertaining while he was on screen. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good summary. I would probably agree with. I was also really excited to see him in this show, but like you said, I guess it was her show, not his show. So maybe that was me overestimating how much he was going to be in here. Fight scene I thought was fantastic, and I was getting your comments on that. Dually here was if you do ever get a chance to go back and watch, like that was every episode of the Netflix TV show was that basically. It was
Nice.
that mixed with like really deep, well, the character Daredevil, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
very accurate portrayal of like questions of faith and family, and um, basically that was his fight scene in like basically every episode against whoever Kingpin or Bullseye or random thugs or whoever it was. So
Nice.
it was really well done. I just find it so weird that because I hadn't even really caught it until I saw it on a website and they were like, well, like she never even mentioned that she saw Daredevil or like Kingpin was never told in this whole series that like Daredevil was there. And I'm thinking like,
He,
did that
he
happen
knows
off
to some
camera
capacity though, because
or?
he says something like, you went toe to toe with him. You didn't mention him by
Yeah, that's
name, but
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I
yeah.
guess I don't know if people are having the issue because he's just not name dropped for like a new viewer at this point. And, we've continually talked about these Marvel properties, and at this point, they're in, I don't even know what year. This is like year 18 or something ridiculous that they've been in these movies at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite that many, but close. But either going to have a repeat customer who has seen some of these properties before, probably, or you're a comic fan in general, or maybe you're just a Disney Plus person and maybe you've kind of come across some of this stuff on your own. I do know from statistics that I have seen that since this show has been on with its maybe more adult rating and the fight scenes, and I don't know if it's Daredevil specifically, but I do know they recategorized the stuff on Disney Plus to put the Netflix stuff in chronological order with the MCU finally.
Oh.
And I know they said the like viewership has like spiked on those, all people going back and rewatching the Netflix shows now.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that's a direct one-to-one correlation or not, but or causation maybe I should say on that.
Hmm.
But it seems to have sparked some people interest in like going back and seeing some of that older stuff, which again, if you haven't seen, I really recommend at least the three seasons of Daredevil and season one of Jessica Jones and
Okay.
the first half of the first season of Luke Cage. Though I do
Oof.
appreciate that that show did try to feel so different. Like it is a straight up
Okay.
Black Harlem piece for 2 seasons, and I give them
Oh
all the
wow.
credit in the world for what they created as an atmosphere, and culture in those. But unfortunately, the villain was just not so great in season 2, and season
Oh.
one was I won't spoil that for you,
Okay. Yeah.
but
I will go and catch up on those at some point.
yeah.
It's just finding the
Oh, and
time.
Punisher. I also really
Hmm.
enjoyed Punisher.
Okay.
Um, I've heard rumors they're going to bring him, John Bernthal, back to do Punisher again in the MCU at some point.
Hmm.
I don't know if they'd have to tone him down or not because that show was just, again, straight up. I have PTSD and I'm going to murder you and I'm going to find every weapon around me to do it. So,
Okay.
but really good stuff too. All right, well, good. So let's keep going here then. So this is kind of, as you mentioned, a little bit of a recap of Hawkeye.
Mhm.
And then we have a break here where it says she finds out that actually it was Fisk, the Kingpin, who had tipped off Hawkeye actually to come and take down this gang, the Tracksuit Mafia, which is the primary villain group in Hawkeye, and that actually is what caused her father to be killed, and therefore she's now taking revenge on Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, instead. 5 months after this, then we get a big time break in this
Mhm.
first one where she goes back to Tamaha and meets with who I thought was one of the standout characters of the show, Biscuits, who I loved this guy. Oh my God.
Uh, he was too cartoony for me. I'm just gonna lay that
That's
out.
very fair, but
Like,
also amazing.
yeah, I mean, I chuckled a few times when he was on screen, but he was just
Yeah.
like they could have gotten, say, like Jack Black to play that role, and it would have felt like he would fit perfectly. And I don't know if that in the whole dark and gritty kind of feel I was expecting, all of a sudden a grown man named Biscuits shows up, and it I don't know. It felt
That's a fair point, I guess.
yeah,
Tonally, maybe he doesn't fit in the show.
yeah. I mean, sure, yeah, he does serve a purpose here and there, but
Hmm.
I don't know. It didn't quite mesh. He didn't as a character, he didn't quite mesh as well as I would have hoped.
Yeah, that's a good call on that. I didn't really think about that too much because there were a few other people like is that technically her I don't even know. Was it technically her grandpa or was it like her grandma's beau or
I
uh
I think they had been married at one point and split. I think it was my understanding of it. So yeah,
okay.
I think he was her grandpa.
He plays Scully as the character's name, but he has minor moments of humor too, but they're usually just like, one-off little side
Mhm.
comments. Okay, well, episode 1 is going to end with her meeting her uncle Henry and basically trying to convince her family, particularly him, to help take down Fisk to take over his empire. And he says he doesn't want to because he doesn't want the family to be in danger. And at the end, our finale here of episode 1 is we find out that Wilson Fisk apparently survives a
Being
shot
shot
to
in the
the eye.
face. Yeah, that's okay. First off, like I said, I didn't see Hawkeye, so I don't know if this happens on screen in the show. I saw it happen here, and I didn't believe he was dead. He was actually dead for a second, any more than
Sure.
I believed Sabine was dead in Ahsoka, or that anyone's ever going to mention the giant hand sticking out of the ocean in this universe ever again. Um, it's just like because no one stays dead in Marvel. I don't know how he survived that.
Yeah.
Uh, he's not superhuman. He's tough, but people don't just walk away from getting shot in the eye.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there, but I will say too. Well, we'll get more back to Kingpin in a bit here, but okay. Anything else you want to say on episode 1?
Going into it, not knowing it was it was more or less just previously on other show. I felt it did a good job establishing things. Having
Hmm.
not seen Hawkeye, I do feel this addressed that thing that you mentioned earlier about needing to watch, 10 other shows to know what's going on in this one. I felt it did a decent job of
Okay.
catching me up to where we were. There were a few things I had questions about, like again, how Kingpin survived that, but and that never gets explained. But
Yeah.
overall, I felt it was better than just dropping us right into the middle of things and saying, "Fend for yourself." you know.
Yeah, well, maybe we should pause here and just quickly mention too, this is the first Marvel Disney Plus show which has come out under this new Marvel Spotlight banner, which is supposed to be, so we've had the MCU proper, and then we've had the special presentation banner, which they created on Disney, and that's only had two installments, and it was the Werewolf by Night they did for Halloween, and then it was the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Obviously, at the moment, one of the two of those ties in far more with the MCU than the other one does. But I think they were trying to come up with a way to do like one-off specials essentially there. Then they have come up with this newer thing, and I think this was part of their revamped plan for Marvel and the MCU, is they have a banner called Marvel Spotlight, which is supposed to be more independent style storytelling, which doesn't require as much knowledge of the entire MCU. Perhaps slash mix with a little bit more of like maybe like the street level hero type thing is my impression, which I love the street level type hero in
Ditto.
Marvel, so I'm excited for that if that's the case. But then they do, I mean, if you just look at this, you have Kingpin who was in the other episode of the show, you have Daredevil made a cameo, they show Hawkeye for a second in there. So
Mhm.
it's like I don't know if you needed any of those to really get this show, but they did also then go ahead and put a lot of elements of other things into this right away.
Mhm.
So we'll see where that idea goes. I don't know if that's their plan for like their version of the new Netflix style street shows or what. I just saw earlier today somebody said the perfect show to kick off that Marvel Spotlight banner would have been Moon Knight
Mm.
because it hasn't really tied in with anything else so far and it just felt really different.
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
So, oh well, shoulda, woulda, coulda. All right, episode two. Oh, I didn't even mention. Oh, you did. In episode one, we had the creation myth at the beginning of that one.
Mhm.
Episode two, we go to, you guessed it, sunny Alabama in the year 1200, where we're playing Choctaw stickball. And this relative of Maya's is the one named Loak, which is the episode name on this. I did like that the episode names were all like relatives.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. And her family is, well, her tribe, I should say, is going to have to vacate the land they live on essentially if they lose this big stickball game. And she also gets the vision of kind of like the creation lady, and her hand starts to glow, and she basically muscles up, and they win the game. And that's what happens in the past. In the present, we have one of the more entertaining scenes in the whole show. I thought I asked Boston earlier, my son, what his favorite scene was in this whole show, and he said the train scene. And I said, "What was the train scene?" And he's like, "Where they go and do the stuff on the train." And I was like, "Oh, you mean okay? So you don't mean like the scene? You mean like half the episode? Okay."
Yeah.
Um, yes,
Sequence.
which I thought this was actually pretty creative because she enlists Biscuit to help her like get on this train and like jump on and then climb underneath the cars and like cut through it and get into this secret car that's on the cart and all of these things. And then like I loved when he picked her back up finally after a really long chase scene of like trying to get her in the train back with the truck and everything. And then he's like, that was like super intense summarizing, but he said like that was super intense. What'd you steal? And she's like, I didn't steal anything. And then I was like, wait, what? Like, what did she do? But creatively, she's not stealing something. She's basically like dropping a bomb off on the train, which I thought was a pretty creative twist to be backwards of what I thought.
It is. It's also very lucky it went off when it was supposed to,
Yeah.
and didn't like murder a bunch of innocent people, by being jostled en route or something.
Yeah.
So, and that brings me to an issue I had with the show and her as a character, but we,
Mhm.
we can get back to that if you want.
Okay. So summarizing the rest of this one quickly here, the bomb goes off, destroys Fisk's facility, one of his armories in New York. So this is like one of her big hits against him. She gets a new leg from Scully, and he is the one who tells her that the first Choctaw she keeps seeing is this Chafa person that she has when she has the visions. And then later we find out that the fallout from the explosion is her Uncle Henry basically saying that he's warning her to stop the attacks because she is going to end up hurting the people close to her. But she says basically she can handle the Kingpin more or less. And then we find out that her grandma, who she is quite estranged from, finally somebody lets slip that Maya's back in town to Grandma finally because she was basically trying to avoid
Yeah.
meeting with Grandma for various reasons involving her mom, I guess.
Meeting with a lot of people she was either related to or friends with, like her cousin she was avoiding as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
she's very different, I guess, than when she used to live there.
Mhm.
Yes, and then Biscuits lets slip that Maya's there to her friend Bonnie as well. Okay, and Maya basically avoids both of them, and that's episode two. Anything else on episode two you want to hit?
Let me take a quick look because I did have some notes. Da, 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 da. I think we hit most of the main points that I had written down on that. Yeah, a good chunk of this was that train sequence. So that was, and that was pretty engaging. I'm not gonna lie.
I agree.
Yeah.
Kind of agree. A lot of good, I presume, physical stunts. I mean, I'm sure probably done with some sort of aids and things of that nature, but it looked like a physical scene. There was, a
Yeah.
sense of danger and urgency and things going on.
Mhm.
Okay, episode three, we are jumping to the 1800s. This one's called Tuclo, and Tuclo is a relative of hers who worked as one of the light horsemen. And this is something that she wants to be involved in, essentially, kind of like a self-patrolling law group, but she's told she's not allowed to do it because she's a girl. And the the essential part here is that she ends up kind of having to man up because, if you will, her family, the boys get pinned down, if you will, by the villains, and then she kind of rides into the scene with her magical shooting abilities and starts just dropping bad guys down.
Mhm.
She loses her father. No, I'm sorry. No, she arrives in time to save him
Mhm.
and his group. Apologies on that. Okay, then we get back to the present again here. Scully is visited by Chula, her grandma, and basically tells her to go reach out to Maya. And Maya is getting visions now that she's back in Tahama. I don't know if this explained just because she's around family or in times of need, or why these are starting here.
Yeah, that was my understanding of it. I don't think it's ever really spelled out, but I don't see any other reason why it would start happening then versus some other time.
Yeah.
So being in the area where her people, were situated, I guess that kind of makes sense as a trigger for the visions, the powers, and that sort of thing.
Okay, and then episode three, I will say most of that episode takes place at a bowling alley where they are held hostage. And again, there's a pretty badass fight scene of like Maya kicking ass with all of these henchmen.
Knock
This is
someone
a,
through a wall at one point.
yeah,
Yeah.
being a little creative with like the bowling, alley props they have there as well as like some fight methods. And
Mhm.
basically she's winning. And then uh essentially Bonnie shows up and Henry and they're both kind of captured, and that was her ultimatum, like stop fighting or we're gonna kill everybody.
Mhm.
And then surprisingly there's a phone call that comes in and the bad guys leave all of the sudden.
Yeah.
And so
Was this also the episode where she ends up kind of tied up in the back room, or was that
yeah.
episode
No,
four?
I think
Okay.
that's this one.
Okay. Um, so how did she know how to make that the roller skate gun thing? Because
Science.
I mean, it was in Hawkeye. Was there ever an indication that she had like technical or engineering training at all?
I
I know
don't
her grandfather does, but
Yeah, I don't think so. That I know of.
okay, because that just seems that's where things started kind of shifting for me for this show. It's like, okay,
Okay.
you just know how to do this and make it work to the point where you can break yourself out. It just seemed like you were expecting me to swallow too much,
Okay.
so to speak. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, this one ends with basically her learning then that Kingpin's still alive. Which I do like that these shows, even in Daredevil, I don't believe he was in those 3 seasons of Daredevil. I don't believe he was ever called Kingpin. He was
Huh.
always called Wilson Fisk on purpose. They may
Huh.
have like offhandedly referred to him as that, but it was almost like a negative term, like he would prefer to be an upright businessman.
Oh, sure, sure.
And then at the end of this one, very, very end, she leaves to go home and is confronted by Wilson Fisk on the way out,
Mhm.
back to her house. Okay. Episode 4, Taloa. We have in 2008. This is when Maya herself now is a very young kid. And because she is deaf, she's trying to order ice cream. And an ice cream vendor doesn't understand what she's trying to ask for and essentially just tells her, like, hey, get out of here, scat kid. You know? But
Yeah.
Wilson Fisk, as he also does in the Daredevil show, doesn't take kindly to people not taking kindly to his kin. So he basically goes over and beats the crap out of this guy. And essentially is like, we need to hide the body. And Maya comes around and doesn't she like kick him or
I
something?
think,
Or
yeah, yeah. There's like this pause where it seems like she's going to, you know,
freak out or something?
yeah,
Yeah.
freak out or realize that Kingpin is kind of a monster or not a good person. Yeah, instead she just like, kicks the guy while he's, bleeding out on the street. So yeah, that was interesting and kind of unexpected. Also, I mean, the guy couldn't figure out what she wanted by her pointing at the picture. And she had money; he could have made a sale and
Right?
saved his life, But
At
yeah, that
least
guy was,
take
yeah,
the money from the kid and
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. That guy just felt
don't give her the ice
like an
cream, but
idiot.
take the money though.
Uh,
All right. So back in our present story again on this one, we have basically Wilson Fisk is leaving. Uh, well, hold on before that happens here. So I thought this was kind of interesting. So basically, he gives her a contact lens, more or less, which through like augmented reality allows her to see him signing even when he does not sign the stuff, which
mhm.
I thought was both creative and kind of weirdly creepy at the same time.
Yeah, because there's these like ghostly, cyber hands that pop up on the screen, and yeah, I thought it was a neat development. It seems like something Stark Industries might have developed at one point, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
But
so yeah, it is. I mean, it's kind of interesting, and then at the same time, I don't know if it's this episode or the next episode, she like rips it out and throws it out. With her counterpoint, I guess, being like kind of like if you really loved me, you would have ever learned sign language at any point.
mhm. Which is fair.
Yeah.
I mean, because yeah, he's taking the easy way out, and just yeah, I can see where she's coming from with that.
All right. And then as we continue on this one, we have an upcoming thing happening at the Choctaw Powwow Festival. Well, we're not quite there yet. She is starting to have more visions, and she finally goes to see Chula. Henry takes her to go see her grandma. And this is basically when grandma comes through with the explanation. I guess that's attempting to try to tie together some of the stuff we've been seeing in this show, which is like when our ancestors know we need them the most, they're gonna come through for us and help us out in that moment with their spiral palm technique or something. I don't really know what's fully going on with that part, but um let's see what else we got here. She
I
feels, so go ahead.
oh, no, I was just gonna say another portion where the show started to get on shaky ground with me because okay, so the ancestors will step up and help when we are in our most dire need. I'm willing to bet the Choctaw people didn't suffer any less under colonialism than other Native American tribes. They didn't really stop that from happening. So it does raise questions if they're going to bring in this historical element. There's gaping holes of why didn't they help then? That sort of thing. And it's just the more I think about
Hmm.
elements like that to the show, the shakier the whole setup seems to be. And again, I think it could have been avoided if they hadn't decided to just shoehorn powers into the character that she didn't have in the comics. Um, but I just wanted to say that there because it's a question that deserves answering, and that there never is one.
Yeah, that's
So
fair. I didn't think about the full cultural an historical context of how that would play out, I guess, with your ancestors helping you. Um, because certainly if that was the case, then, maybe life would be quite a bit different today. You're right.
Yeah, and it's not like the ancestors just started offering power in this day and age, because we see through the flashbacks
Through the
that,
flashbacks,
yeah,
yeah.
so they don't even have that excuse. So it's just, I feel like it's a poor choice they made to even include this whole element in the story
Mm.
when all is said and done. I may be jumping the gun a bit and getting into a bit of impressions here,
Well, let's
but
keep going, and then
okay,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's going to have to be addressed here in our wrap up at the end for sure. But let's finish off episode 4 here. We have Chula essentially also having visions, and she starts to work on I'll call it a dress. I don't know, they call it a special garment here on the Wikipedia page, but essentially like an outfit that represents their culture more so than what maybe she's usually wearing.
I think, and viewers or listeners, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think ceremonial garb like this is usually referred to as, I think it's raiment. I think is what it's usually referred to as. I could be wrong, but
Okay.
that's my understanding of it. It might differ from culture to culture, but I think that's the term.
Okay.
Or regalia, not raiment. I'm sorry, regalia.
Oh yes. Okay. Native American regalia. Yes, that sounds correct. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, this is where we also had the all right, now this is a minor spoiler for you watching Daredevil. I will say there wasn't much in here, but
Okay,
this one does have one
okay.
where she goes to Fisk's hotel to kill him, sneaks up to his room, is ready to like shoot him in the back of the head, and then he turns around and like talks to her instead and basically is like, "Listen, my dad used to be my mom, so I killed him with this hammer in this box, which I'm gonna give to you." That
Yeah.
scene is in Daredevil, Justin.
Oh, okay.
You will see a little boy bludgeon the fuck out of somebody until they're dead in that show.
Jeez.
So just be prepared for that as well.
I appreciate the heads up. Thank you.
Yes.
Oof.
Um, yeah, and then basically says, here, use it to kill me as like your father figure. And if not, you can always come meet me in New York and you can join my empire. I'll give it to you, he even says earlier in the episode here. And then we kind of are left off with the cliffhanger before the last episode to see what she's going to do. Obviously, she doesn't seem like she's going to take his deal, but
Mhm.
he seems slightly delusional in the whole series in general.
Yeah, and I don't know if it can be attributed to the head trauma. I don't know if he was like that leading up to this. I don't know,
Well, and I
but
will say in the other show, he was always very like sure of his decisions and how he saw the world. He was a really well done character in that other show, Daredevil, and I was not entirely sold on Vincent D'Onofrio playing the Kingpin because sometimes in my head he's still like the goofy guy from Men in Black, and other roles that he's had through the years. But man, this guy, I will say maybe only second to Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. Like, and Daredevil has not even been on the air for years now, but this guy like still lives that character. Like if you follow his like social media, like that's all he does is post about like bring me back as Kingpin. Kingpin would approve of this. Like this is my thing. I want to come back and fight people. And like he makes
oh,
such an intimidating Kingpin as a presence, I think. I picture Kingpin being like slightly bigger in my head, like comic books with Spider-Man and Daredevil, but he actually is like such a full and solid actor that he actually pulls it off really well.
yeah.
Okay. Season finale slash series finale question mark. We have episode 5 here. This is called Maya. Um, a really weird scene to start this episode where Maya's little again and kills a woodpecker with a slingshot, or is it's dying, and then she brings it to her mom essentially, who's like, "Why'd you do this?" And then she uses her hands to heal the woodpecker, which I kind of thought like when Maya's full potential was going to be unlocked here, it was going to be like that she was a healer, and that was kind of be like how this series ended.
Mhm.
Um,
But
that's not the case.
not at all.
Um, so I don't know. Do you remember that scene well enough? Did she essentially hurt the bird? Why did she hurt the bird? You
I
remember?
she
Was
said because I wanted to see if I could hit it, which immediately made me dislike the character because I like animals. I always have.
yeah.
And just seeing someone, yes, it's a CGI woodpecker. Yes, it's not real. Yes, you know, it's a TV show. But just seeing that happen, for no good reason, she wasn't going to eat it. She wasn't, she didn't need to kill it for some to save the tree or, there was no reason, just because she could. That just did not sit well with me. And I think that's the only reason she gave, to see if she could hit it.
So I don't know if I made this up in my head or not watching it, but when she did it and then she took it to her mom, my first thought was, and I like this as a better explanation, is she really was not thinking about the bird at all. That part I believe is fully true, but my impression was that she purposely hurt the bird to see if she could basically force her mom into using those healing powers in front of her. And I could be wrong, but that's kind of like what I was thinking. Like maybe she knew about it or she hadn't seen it a lot and she was like, can you do this whenever you want? Or like, I have so many questions about this. And maybe she was so young, mom was like, I'm not going to talk to you about this till you're older. We don't do it unless we need to. And so she's like, okay, I'm going to injure this thing that is like a good thing in the world and you're going to have to use your power to try to save it. And I'm going to get to watch. And I don't know if I made that up or not, but that
Um,
was all I could think of is why she would do that.
that looking back, and it was at least a week ago that I watched this. I could see it being interpreted that way. I don't remember if they came out and gave much of a nod towards that, but I could see that interpretation. Um, I still think it's a shitty thing for someone to do to a wild animal, but
Yeah.
I could see that being like an underlying reason beyond just I wanted to see if I could hit it kind of a thing. Um, but
Yeah, because if it's the hit it thing, then I guess maybe that's supposed to just show like her skill and aiming prowess that she'll
mhm,
have for fighting later. I don't know, but
yeah,
all
but
right, let's get to the season finale here proper in the present now. We have the big Choctaw Festival going on and a variety of scenes at this one. We have biscuits. P.S. I love that it's biscuits and not biscuit. He's not even
yeah,
just
yeah,
biscuit, he's biscuits. It's the whole role.
you cannot be contained in one biscuit.
Biscuits tells Maya Chula and Bonnie are gone, and so she comes back to Tamaha again, goes to Chula's home. She has a vision there with her mom, Taloa. Taloa tells her she is basically the summary of all of her peoples before her, and that this legacy will echo through
And we
her
have a title.
actions. And we have a title. So, I mean, did the title make sense to you, I guess? Is that a,
It did.
yeah,
Insofar as what they built up here. I mean, if you take into account there, none of that was in the comics, not as much, but because I think there it was implied that she could like echo or like duplicate the moves of her opponents really, really readily.
right.
Uh, I don't know if it needed this new interpretation, but it did make sense in what they were building.
Yeah, I mean, well, remind me because I know you're spotty on these. Did you see Black Widow with Taskmaster?
I actually did not.
Okay.
But I know
It,
enough about Taskmaster to know that's his kind of his shtick too. The eidetic memory, the
yeah.
adaptive fighting. Yeah.
It was one of the more poorly done characters, I think, in the MCU.
Oh.
What they did with Taskmaster, because they switched it from a guy to a girl, which I don't necessarily care about that,
Uh-huh.
but B, they made it like a girl who was, I forget if she was like constantly drugged or had like neural implants, and that's how she was able to replicate like what she saw, but she was just like a zombie essentially. And I was like, oh, this is not a really fun take on the Taskmaster.
Oh.
And it didn't really have, they did this thing that they've done to a couple characters where like, and I don't claim to be a Taskmaster expert in the comics, but
Mhm.
his face, his mask, if you will,
Yeah.
looks like a mask. I don't know what material that would indicate to you as a viewer or a reader, But in the movie, she was like this very metallic-y looking skull-faced creature, but it wasn't even like a good skull looking face. It was like a metal mask that somebody had on over their face with like a hood over top of it. And it was just one of the
Oh,
more disappointing characters I think they've done
oh
in
wow.
the MCU. Now that character is coming back, PS, next year in the Thunderbolts, which is kind of their version of Suicide Squad.
Mm.
So we'll see if that character can get any kind of more interesting storyline than what they had in the first one. So keep an eye out for that. But
Hopefully.
back to where we're at here.
Mhm.
We have basically Chula's finished garment, which is the regalia you're talking about
Mhm.
earlier, and then back to the powwow festival. Maya finds Fisk, who obviously has kidnapped Chula and Bonnie both, and he is going to kill her whole family because she betrayed him. But then we get the scene stealer of all scene stealers. We find out why Biscuits was at the junkyard that whole time. And by whole time, I mean one random scene where he was like, I'll see if there's anything here I can use. He built a
And is
monster
there ever?
truck overnight, which he uses to crush some of the bad guys on Wilson Fisk's
He uses to
payroll.
commit vehicular manslaughter is what he does. But yeah,
That
that
bottom of
oh,
this Monaco was a little stronger than the top.
it's settled. It's settled. But that does bring up while Cody's recovering, that does bring up another issue I had with this. I mean, it goes back to something from She-Hulk where again, the Daredevil scene where they're fighting in the parking lot and just crashing cars, wrecking them left and right. No repercussions, no consequences. Here, people are losing their lives, and and sometimes as a result of civilians taking those lives.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any sort of repercussions at all. It's just it's cartoonish in a way, despite dealing with some really heavy stuff like murder. The fact that it's just like, oh, this happens and we move on, and no one bats an eyelash again, and the day is saved. It's just
I mean, you've been to state fairs. You know how things go there. What happens at
yeah,
the state fair stays at the state fair.
yeah. Usually it's the rides that are killing people, not like a
That's
dude in a
this is
monster
true.
truck.
This is true. Not the dude in the monster truck. You are correct. Okay, we'll finish this off quickly here. Let's see. Maya uses her powers and now also somehow like spreads them. So that was another question of,
Yeah,
I guess Chula is the grandma. So I guess maybe
related. Yeah.
somehow that works. And Bonnie also gets them, and the three ladies basically whoop ass on Fisk's men.
Mhm.
And then we get kind of an interesting scene here where she kind of goes into Wilson Fisk's memory in an attempt to heal him, actually, which I thought was kind of creative also. Like the way you beat the terrible bad guy is actually to like heal him of what is wrong with him, I thought was actually kind of a refreshing idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she goes back to like basically when he was little, but I believe he was still old in the scene, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
He
was
was
still,
watching it as an
yeah.
adult. Yeah.
And we saw, or didn't see, kind of saw, presumably his mom just being like battered into the wall. Some really, that's kind of some dark stuff too, I will say. You know,
Yeah.
that was one of the scenes like of the few that I watched with my kids that I was like you guys know what's going on in the scene, and this is not a healthy environment.
Right.
But um,
But I mean, it had to earn that TPMA rating somehow, I guess.
yeah, that's true. Okay, and then Fisk comes back out of it. He does not fully let go of that anger. It did seem to affect him a little bit,
Mhm.
but he kept screaming, "What did you do to her?" over and over. What did you do? What did you do?
Mhm.
And then essentially he hops in and leaves before the police arrive. We have Maya saying goodbye to her family the next day. Um, and then we get a really interesting mid-credit scene on this one, which I'm assuming you saw that, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I made sure to sit through that. Yeah.
So question one I had on this is when do you think this scene took place? Is this after the Choctaw Festival, or was this when he was waiting for her to leave on the plane to New York?
I was I was assuming it was afterwards, which undercuts anything that she actually did to his mind, to his memories. Is because if this does happen after that, then the answer to the question, what did you do? The answer is nothing, because he's just moving ahead with greater ambitions to further his schemes, further his empire,
Yeah.
and gain more power. Uh, if it happened before, it wasn't well established. It could have been like a little thing in the corner, 2 days ago or something like that, just to establish that this wasn't the present day. Um, so I think this is present time, where it's after the festival. It's while he's heading back to New York that this is all going down.
Yeah.
That's my impression.
It very well could be. I was only confused. Like the only scene in the show we had where he was on that plane was when he was expecting her to come so they could fly to leave. And then that like
True.
somebody called and they were like, she's not coming or something like that.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it matters overall. I guess I see what you're saying about like if she was trying to change him. And I guess if that's the angle, then I guess what they're saying is he's just such a completely warped character that any
He can't be
semblance of
changed.
like trying to come out of it is like, if you brought me out 1%, like that's 1% I haven't felt in decades. What
Mhm.
did you do? It's
Yeah.
kind of bizarro, but I actually loved the mid-credit implication here, which was like they had people on a news story saying that there was no clear forerunner for the New York mayor election,
Mhm.
which I thought was brilliant because he is such a compelling character, I think, in the series I've seen him in so far. A weird depiction in Hawkeye, I will add. I'm still not on board with
Hmm.
Hawaiian shirt Kingpin running around under his suit, but I thought if they took this and developed this properly to where he is like the mastermind of all street level activity in New York, that could really create a compelling little mini-verse, I think, for Marvel to have all these street level heroes running around, and he could still
Oh,
pop up
definitely.
in like a Spider-Man or something also.
Mhm.
My question, and it is a problem that Marvel has in comics historically as well, or anything like this historically in comics, is like if you knew the Kingpin was in charge of New York City and you had like these 10 street level heroes trying to constantly thwart his every efforts, but he's just so good and shrewd that he's always like 3 steps ahead.
Mhm.
There is still no reason you couldn't like just borrow Thor for 10 minutes to just destroy the Kingpin, and that's the end of the story. So you have to suspend belief a little bit there
That's fair.
for the
Yeah.
sake of the story. But I always wondered that. I'm like, why not just have, like, I don't know.
That's a very solid point. I
Batman needs to clean
mean,
up Gotham City. Guess what? Borrow Superman for 10 minutes and it's done. There you go.
there have been story arcs in the comics
Yeah,
where
I
that
guess
sort of thing
so.
has happened, and it's hasn't always ended well. But anyway, but yeah, that is a solid point.
But I did think it was a pretty cool way to end it though. Just like if he gets his hands around New York and that's kind of where they're gonna go for this next little street phase. I thought that was a pretty cool.
I agree with you on that, except for the implications of what that means for the show as a whole. This show, Echo,
Okay.
because okay, so let's say he is going to go on run for mayor. Let's say he becomes mayor and just gets even more powerful and whatnot. What was actually accomplished in Echo? Because she didn't destroy his empire. She didn't take over his empire, which is honestly what it seemed like her ambition was for a lot of the show.
Yep.
Because there was that whole they've had their kingpin. It's time for a queen, kind of that
Yeah.
line. So that never happened. And she didn't like get him behind bars. She didn't stop him. He's on his way back to his home turf. And so what actually happened in Echo that's of a consequence, except for him moving on to something he might have done anyway?
Yeah. If you're
That's my
looking
main
at
question.
plot wise, I would kind of agree. Not a lot of the stones have been moved on the board, but I guess if you're looking at character wise, maybe for his side, just maybe he has this interesting legal option of acquiring more power. Where if he was actually the elected mayor of New York City, I would think that would probably afford him some more sway in terms of how the city handles, and I guess that could be the counterpoint to some of those heroic ambitions I was just talking about. Like,
Hmm.
well, yes, you can do this, but if it's illegal in New York to do this, then you can't do that. You know what I mean? So that could
Oh,
be
sure.
interesting.
Yeah.
And for her, I guess maybe just like rediscovering her family and feeling like she's not a
Yeah.
loner slash losing her father figure as corrupt as he was. But
Yeah.
she seems to have kind of come 180 from where she was at a little girl kicking a dead ice cream man's body.
That's true. Because honestly, for a lot of the show, I mean, I said I went into this expecting like a gritty street level hero, and like I said, I don't think I really got any of that for a good portion of this because most of what she does in this doesn't really seem heroic. She puts her family and friends that she hasn't seen in ages in harm's way at great risk to them and
Yep.
and the community as a whole, simply to try and further her own ends. She doesn't want to, at least my interpretation of it, given what she said, she doesn't want to stop the Kingpin. She wants to become him. She's not a hero for a lot of this. And I gather, in the comics, she is a kind of a villainous character, being the assassin under the employ of the Kingpin. So that kind of makes sense. But she's the star of her own show. And usually, at least in Marvel, that indicates some level of heroism. And she does, like you said, turn a new leaf at the end.
Yeah.
But for a lot of this, it's like, why am I rooting for you? And I don't know, it was a weird decision for them to lean so heavily into her, ambitions to become a new crime lord, to, blow up, whatever that depot was that the train went to, certainly, killing people in the process, killing people in general. Hell, the first time she snaps someone's neck, she doesn't react at all,
Yeah.
in that first fight. It's just, it was very hard at times to root for her because she didn't seem like a good person who was worth rooting for, you know?
Hmm. So do you think she was primarily motivated to take his empire and continue it as the queen pin, if you will? Do you think that just basically stemmed from like her solution for what would hurt him the most? Like, do you think that's ultimately her motivation here? Is like, this is how I get you the most. I take everything away from you that you have.
I think so, but the next step of that wasn't I take everything away that you had and dissolve it. It's I take everything away that you had and I'm in charge now. And
Right.
the implication there is she's not going to be any better or nicer of a person than he was.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just I've very mixed feelings about how I was supposed to interpret her character throughout a lot of the show.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think she's a both a complex and one-dimensional character, if that's possible at the same time. I do wonder how much of
Yeah.
that is due to the mode of communication, though, like having to have this character express themselves only with like the most expedient hand gestures they can with sign
Hmm.
language to explain their motivation. But again, that shouldn't be like
Yeah.
a crutch for writing character either.
Yeah. And even then she could, and I do have to call out something we haven't touched on.
Hmm.
Um, and it feels strange approaching this because a lot of what she had to say was through sign language and such. She didn't. She wasn't a good actor. I'm just going to come out and say that. I'm going to frame this around the fact that in my job, I work with deaf people on occasion. They come in, they do their business. I interact with them as best I can. I don't know sign language, but you can communicate a lot through like facial expressions, or if I really need to, I can write something down. But the people I work with at my job, they display more emotion just through their face, just say depositing a check or something like that, than this than this actress does throughout most of the show. Her default expression throughout most of this is she looks like she's either just mildly annoyed or kind of pissed off, and it doesn't matter what's happening. Her family's in danger, same expression. She just snaps a man's neck for the first time in her life, crossing a line that she can never go back from. Changing, basically doing something that that she can never undo. No expression. Just time and again until I didn't consciously realize this until like episode 5, maybe 6. She's I think talking to her grandmother's or someone, and she actually cracks a smile, and it was jarring because she
Hmm.
showed so little visual emotion throughout most of the show, and that it's not due to the fact that she was only communicating through sign, because like I said, I've known deaf people and they emote, and she doesn't, and it just felt very like a missed opportunity. Like she could have, either she got bad direction or she was just inexperienced or something, but she nothing on her face usually ever corresponded to what was going on around her. And that really took me out of a lot of what was going on in this show at times.
I think I recall the moment you're talking about, and I do kind of agree with what you're saying here. That I think I remember that moment where she smiled, and it was
It was so
it was very different. It felt different. You're right.
yeah, and it wasn't until then that I kind of realized just how blank her expression was for a lot of it. It was just strange.
Um, well, let's seg that into a larger question I had here, which is just kind of a general overview. What did you think of the actual performances then? Anything else you want to say on her or other members of the cast?
Um, I think I've said most of what I wanted to on her. Like in the she if she had displayed more expression on her face, it would have made her a much more I don't even want to necessarily say likable, but a much more relatable character. She would have seemed more human than just this emotionless force that is just kind of moving through the story. The others fared better. Like her grandfather, I liked him. Scully, was that his
Yep.
character's name?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I liked him a
yeah,
lot too.
yeah. He was very personable, very just had a good feel to him. The grandmother, also, seems like she was a genuine person. Even Biscuits, I know I said he was really goofy, but he had personality. And Kingpin, I didn't really get the feel that he was as imposing as he should have been, but I liked him well enough in the role. But the sticking point just keeps coming back to the main actor, the main actress. But I guess it is actor these days. And just the fact that she just sort of walked through her lines, as it were, or through her role without really seeming like she was fully invested in it, I guess is the best way to put it. The side casts, the side characters were better in general, but she just didn't emote enough to really seem believable a lot of the time.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what you just said. I also like Scully quite a bit. I did like Biscuits quite a bit. I guess you're right. He does kind of maybe stick out a little bit. There wasn't time in the series, nor do I really think more time should have been devoted, but I wouldn't have minded getting to know the other four ancestor women just a little
Mhm.
bit more of who they were. I feel like the one that played the stickball game, we probably maybe got to know a little bit of who she was just from that moment.
Yeah, I think we spent the most time with her backstory. Yeah.
Grandma, I didn't mind Grandma at all. Kingpin, I thought did a good job in this one again, and Uncle Henry, I think did a decent job here as
Hmm.
well with the bowling alley. What was the bowling alley called? Didn't have like a black
Uh,
black
the
something, Blackfoot or
yeah,
Black Crow or
Black Crow, I think it was. Yeah,
some kind
yeah,
of bowling alley.
yeah.
Yeah, I would agree a little bit with what you're saying here with the main star, the Salakwa Cox. I was just looking up some uh background on her here as well, and basically she's from your neck of the woods. She's from Green Bay,
Hmm.
and she is Menominee Mohican in real life. She everything is genuine. She is the real deal Native American. She is deaf, and she does have a prosthetic leg that they used
Hmm.
and actually rewrote the role of the show for her because of her prosthetic leg, which is pretty cool,
Huh.
I have to say. But it said they had sent out a casting call for a deaf Native American actor, and she also says here maybe to part of what your problem is here, Justin, with your
Mhm.
problem, as it says she really had only acted in like high school plays prior to
Ooh.
like just barely getting into Hollywood here. And I think I was on oh, I have it up right here actually. Her
Uh,
IMDb page. She has like, let's see here. She is listed as an actress in Hawkeye and Echo. That's
ooh,
it.
that might explain a few things.
So maybe it's not all character based.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I mean, I do appreciate that they did try to represent the character, the comic character as accurately as they could in terms of the casting choice, but
yeah.
this just makes me think back to like what Konami or Team Silent did for Silent Hill 2, where the story goes that they cast the guy who voiced James Sunderland because he looked like the character model. And much as I love that game, the voice acting in it is not very good, especially from James. It's kind of stilted at times. It feels very amateurish, and yeah, it's just weird that they decided to do that for like a multi-million-dollar project, similar here, where they just decided to cast someone who looked the part, which is ostensibly a good thing, but to
Hmm.
put someone with that little experience behind a project, in the Marvel, the MCU, it just seems like an awful lot of responsibility to put on someone who doesn't have a lot of experience. And I don't know if maybe they just didn't give her enough time to, with acting coaches or whatever, but that explains a lot if she had that little experience going in.
And of all places, I'm pulling some information apparently off an interview they did with Teen Vogue magazine. You can draw your own conclusions on if that's anything, but it's just reading a little more about this. It's really interesting. Just some more behind the scenes type stuff, which I was not privy to any of this till I'm looking at it right now, basically. Saying that again, she is excited for audiences like kids that are natives in the country to see people both representing on the Marvel universe and on TV, and then also people with disabilities on TV. Also, she's really excited about that. And then it also says a little further down here that she was working in an Amazon warehouse when she was encouraged to sign up to randomly try this description that basically fit her. So
Huh.
they did that. And to Marvel's credit, which I know there have been issues with some Marvel behind the scenes employees as far as like what's fair treatment, not fair treatment here and there on different things. This one says the behind the scenes team went above and beyond. They hired a deaf acting coach for her, a deaf personal trainer for her, so she could learn the stunt training as well, and made sure everyone on the set could do basic sign language so they could communicate with her as well. And then also apparently it says on the first day of filming, they even brought in apparently the majority of the Choctaw actors are actual Choctaw peoples, and says they did a blessing ceremony to start, and they had representatives on set throughout the entire filming to make sure their language was pronounced correctly and basically the heritage was shown accurately on screen.
Huh.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. Kudos to them for going through all that effort to make sure things were accurate and represented, fairly. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Um, yeah, okay, let's see. I just had a couple tiny last things here. Let me see what else we didn't get to. So in general, fight scenes in this you enjoyed.
Yes. Yeah.
Is the Daredevil one the standout moment for you, or
Um, that one was good. I also remember really liking the fight in the in the bowling alley.
yeah.
That one, just because it covered such a large area and made use of a lot of different things in that. I enjoyed that one. But yeah, overall the fight choreography, it picked things up because during times that were occasionally a bit slow. Because I will say, despite only being 5 episodes, this show did feel like it almost would have been better condensed into a movie. It would have, they could have cut down the Hawkeye flashbacks a little bit. Just got the core moments in. They could have trimmed some of the fat and made it a leaner, quicker experience, I think.
Hmm.
Especially because at the end, like I said, I don't feel like plot wise a lot was accomplished. Considering where Kingpin ended up and all that. So I know that's more than what you asked, but I do feel like the fight scenes kind of helped keep things flowing,
No, yeah,
certainly.
that's
And
fair. So even at 5 episodes, you're saying it still could have been shorter for you, you think?
I mean,
You're talking
yeah,
roughly 40 minutes an episode. You got about 200 minutes
yeah.
content,
So
a
that's
little
like
over 3 hours,
three-ish hour, yeah, 3.5 hours,
three and
give
a
or
half.
take.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like if you're gonna have something that's in that time frame already, maybe scale it back a bit, make it a movie, make it more easily digestible than than it was. And not to say that it was hard to sit through, it just felt like there were parts that could have been trimmed a bit to make it flow better.
Okay. And then yeah, I would basically again echo what you're saying. Echo
Oh,
what you're saying here, which is I really those are the in terms of fight, those were the two that stood out to me. The Daredevil scene, just I mean, as somebody who's seen that show before, again, it that looked presentation wise different than what they've done in the MCU so far, with kind of
Mhm.
like the cameraman moving around and following the action, and it was
Yeah.
just, this to this to this to this, which is very different than your typical popcorn Marvel movie where you got like quick cut, quick cut, quick cut, lots of CGI
Mhm.
here and there, and
Yeah, it was much more
um,
dynamic.
yes. So I liked that quite a bit. All right. Last couple things I have here is, do you feel like this show should have been rated TVMA? It was, but should it have been?
I I'm hard pressed to really see what warranted that. I mean, yes, there was some blood here and there. It was clearly CGI, but I mean, so there was some bloodshed on camera. Some of the fights were, I mean, you see the main character snap someone's neck. I guess that's kind of dark for one of these. Um, and there was that sequence at the end inside Kingpin's mind where you know what's happening to his mother, and that's really dark. But all things considered, I didn't feel like this was really it didn't feel like it warranted that. I mean, TV, what's the one below that? TV 14 or whatever.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that I think it would have fell squarely into that category. It could have, if they had wanted it to. There wasn't anything really egregious. I don't think any. Did anyone even swear during this that you remember?
I don't remember any
Yeah, like
language.
so there wasn't really much, if any, profanity. There was only a little bit of blood, a few intense sequences during fights. There was no nudity, that's for sure. I don't see anything on this that really warranted
You
an
didn't see
MA
the
rating.
Kingpin shower scene? That was
No,
at the
you have
end
to
of the
pay extra
credits.
for that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, to me, it didn't feel like it was anything truly shocking or whatnot that would have warranted that level of that level of controversy over it being like a Disney show with an MA rating.
Yeah, I do have to wonder if they made the decision like they wanted to have a show that was TVMA,
That's kind of what I'm
just to kind
wondering
of get
too.
into it. Maybe like this is their get your feet wet type thing. I don't know. I don't know if we still have
Maybe.
heard if Deadpool is going to be rated R. I assume it has to be, but I don't know if I've heard that.
Oh, it's going to take a lot of people off if it's not.
But I'm looking at the Common Sense Media webpage here, which has a lot of, preview this before you show it to my kids type stuff. This one says violence is frequent, committed against faceless villain types who are hooded or otherwise have their identity obscured. Expect scenes in which people are stabbed, shot, have their throats slashed with blood but no gore. Characters we've gotten to know are suddenly killed. The girl loses her mother in a car accident. We see the moment of impact, flying glass and metal. Her father's later murdered in front of her. Character used violence to settle scores. Lots and lots of hand-to-hand combat and battle scenes with murder and death. Main character is a contract killer, so she's also committing many acts of violence. One they didn't even list in there, which I think to me was one of the hardest ones I mentioned to watch, was when Kingpin was listening to his mom just get beat to shit in the next room. Like that was a hard one for me.
Well, see, that's how ratings work in Hollywood, really, it seems. It doesn't matter what's implied, it's what's shown explicitly on
Right.
screen. And I agree, that was probably the most disturbing scene in the show, but because you didn't see anything, they didn't care about it. And that's just a bizarre way of looking at things to me.
Yeah, agreed. So I'm kind of more with you. I don't know that it needed the MA rating,
Yeah.
but it is labeled that, so I guess they have their first one. There they go.
Yeah.
Last thing I have on my notes, unless you have more, Justin, is you had mentioned you wanted to go back to, well, you already mentioned the length of the show, but you had mentioned maybe a little bit of the pacing and the flow earlier.
Yeah, so it did feel like they front loaded the fights a lot. Like you get the pretty solid section or two of action in the first episode. The second episode, it's similar with that was one with the train, right? Or was that
Yes,
episode? Yeah,
I think that was true. Yep.
and yeah, and then
Or,
in
yes.
episode three, you've got the fight in the roller rink, and it feels like even by episode three, it felt like there had been
Oh,
they
yeah,
started
it's a roller
spacing things.
rink. I've said
Well,
bowling
it
alley.
is a
I
roller
think
rink.
this whole
Yeah,
thing,
yeah. I
something with
thought,
a wooden floor used for some purpose.
um, but yeah, even by episode three, when you get that fight in the rink, it feels like there's started to be more and more kind of like slower scenes, more I guess character development, character interaction between the fights, and it even to the point where at the end, during the whole powwow thing, it doesn't feel like it's as climactic, as engaging as the fights earlier on. It feels like they really wanted to hook people at the beginning with, you know, some pretty visceral and engaging fights, and they didn't quite follow through with the rest of it. And I think because it is so lopsided, that's part of what made the rest of the show feel
Hmm.
like it was uh, maybe a bit bloated. Um,
But
so
you bring up
yeah.
something interesting in there, which is, that first fight scene with the thugs in the warehouse, and then Daredevil interjects, and then if
Mhm,
that had been the style of fighting through the whole show, which it really wasn't, then
mhm.
maybe I could see the TVMA as the
Yes.
rating.
Yeah, because that was that. You're right. That did feel different than the other fights. The other fights weren't bad by any means, but they didn't have that polish, that panache that that first one did. That just felt like it was more competently shot and framed, and just the camera work was better. Um, and yeah, they did some interesting stuff with the later fights, but yeah, it didn't feel like it had that level of quality as that first fight did. So.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, anything else you have on your end?
I'd forgotten about this until you mentioned the car crash. I quibble about how she lost her leg because unless it was a really, really old truck that crashed, windshield glass doesn't break like that.
Hmm.
It's, I mean, because she ends up with like this jagged, giant shard of glass going through her leg pretty much from the windshield after the car crashes. And windshield glass, at least in modern times, is built to shatter, just like into little tiny granules that don't cut you.
Yeah.
It's safety glass. So unless this was a very old truck, and I don't think it looked like it was, that it would have made more sense for her to lose her leg just by getting crushed against like the console or something. The glass thing felt dumb if you stop and think about it. That's like the only other thing that came to mind that I wanted to mention after you brought up the car, the wreck.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's put a number on this bad boy. Let's do some wrap up thoughts here. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Um, yeah, I'll go first. Why not?
Okay.
So I'm doing this on a scale where 10 is absolutely amazing. 5 is a very average show. 1 is just why was this even made? Um, and I think this was certainly better than some of the Marvel things we've covered lately. It's certainly a hell of a lot better than Secret Invasion. I'll say that. Um, but I have issues with it. If I'm among them being the thing I brought up a couple of times, that by the end of it, it feels like aside from some character development, nothing really happened of consequence. Wilson Fisk could have decided to run for mayor without any of this happening. Um, is Maya's reconnection with her family, is that going to impact anything in the MCU moving forward? Who knows? Is she going to show up again as a prominent force? Who knows?
Yeah.
But it just feels like not a whole lot happened in these 5 episodes that that's going to leave a lasting impact. That said, it had some good fight scenes. It did have some likable characters. And overall, I mean, it was interesting seeing a different cultural take on a part of the world in the MCU that we haven't really seen before. Um, I don't know how I feel about them changing the character of Echo from the comics. Again, I don't have a strong connection to her, but anytime there's like a change made to a character that seems pretty cool already, it rubs me a little bit the wrong way.
Okay.
So all that said, I'm going to put this one a little bit below like an average. I'm going to put it at a 4.5. So not terrible by any means, but it had issues. And I don't regret the time I spent with it, but I definitely felt like it could have been better.
4.5, huh?
Mhm.
That's high praise. That's high praise. This is tough. I usually don't get around to putting a number on things until we do the actual on air, but this time I purposefully didn't because I wanted to actually talk through this one with you quite a bit till I came up with
Sure.
my number. I do think there was a lot in here that I liked, and I think that my family liked. Those primarily being some of the fight scenes were really good. I did enjoy the train episode quite a bit. I did like some of the supporting characters they had in here. I did enjoy that they had how successful they were, at least a little examination of like who your family is and what they mean to you and where you come from and what your legacy and your lineage are both. So I thought that was all kind of interesting. Um, I love Kingpin as a villain. Like I've never sat down to rank Marvel villains depicted on screen, but I would guess he'd be somewhere on the top 10 at least, from the Daredevil show, which again I encourage you to watch, Justin, and anybody else who
Mhm.
hasn't seen. But there were also times where the powers that she had seemed to be a little, I'm not exactly sure what they're supposed to be, and I don't know if she and the family knew what they were supposed to be,
That's a good
because
point.
it was kind of just like your
Whatever the
ancestors
plot
will
needed.
help you if you need help,
Yeah,
you know? So there's a little bit of that. There was some slower spots, definitely with the pacing. I tell you one thing I mentioned earlier, but I both really liked, and it bothered me, but that's why I liked it, is those moments I mentioned where the show just would go silent for like 3 minutes at a stretch because there was signing going on, or you were a couple rare moments where it felt like you were just going into her head more and you were experiencing the world as she was experiencing it. And I thought that was really cool for a little while. And then it got to where I was like, ooh, I don't know if I like this. Like I'm getting uncomfortable. But then I was like, ooh, this is what life is like for them 24/7. And then I kind of liked it even more once I started to think about it that way, because I do feel like there's moments where the audience will be uncomfortable watching this, just at least
yeah.
auditorily, if nothing else. And I kind of enjoyed that as well. If I am going to rank this one, this is one of those very few categories I have of rankings where I do more of a Dave style, only in that I actually have my list in front of me with my rankings of all of the MCU shows, so I can say like, was it better than these or worse than these? Where would it slot in along this continuum here?
Hmm.
And I'm gonna go with a final score on Echo of about 6.8 for me, which would put it nearest neighbors right below WandaVision, and which was a 7, and right above Miss Marvel, which I had a 6 on. So that
Hmm.
would put it just below the halfway point in the bottom half, I would say. But by no stretch did I not enjoy my time giving this a shot and seeing a new character introduced to us, and spending some time with a new group of people that we haven't seen before, both family unit wise and also, representation wise. I think that was awesome as well. So, okay. I was checking what's coming up for Marvel. It's a pretty light schedule, as I think we talked about in prior podcasts. They only have the one movie this year. It's Deadpool 3. That's all they have coming out.
Yeah.
TV shows seems to be, I'm a little confused here. 5 days ago on Nerdist.com, they put out a list that claims it is just Echo, and then the
Hmm.
Agatha show in the fall, and possibly a Wakanda show at some point,
Oh.
and then a X-Men 97 season, which they've been promoting a lot. So they're actually going back to the old Fox cartoon, the doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and adding a new season to it, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then there is another show called Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which I don't know anything about. My impression is it's a cartoon, but I'm not positive on that.
It sounds with a title like that, it sounds like it would be.
So that's all they have listed though. So and Daredevil, I think,
Oh.
got pushed back again this year to next year, and I think they've redone it
Oof.
again. It was supposed to be 18 episodes, and then they shrank it down again to like
Oh.
way shorter, but I think they're trying to tighten up the script. And I think, I don't know if it's because of this show, I don't want to say that, but I think they are seeing people kind of enjoying the Netflix shows that are on Disney
Mhm.
Plus now and being like, let's go back and try that style again.
Okay.
And I know they have Kingpin and Daredevil, and I know they just re-signed Foggy Nelson and also Karen Page back as well, the actors and
Okay.
actresses for those roles. So I'm excited for them because they were also excellent supporting characters in that show of Daredevil. So
Nice.
So yeah, that's what we got coming up there. Last thing I have here for us is next week we are finally taking a look at the Indie Showcase
Ah,
on the
yes.
game that we played a while back. Seems like a while ago now, but we were all so anxious to get into it and get it going. And that'll kick off season 3 for us, which seems
Woo.
incredibly impossible to believe, but there's that for us. All right, and we'll head out tonight with Justin telling us
Oh no.
if he had to take a road trip with biscuits somewhere in the United States, where would they be going and why? You have 20 seconds, sir.
Okay, well, Biscuits, as I said, seems like a very, comical, very goofy sort of character. So he seems like he'd enjoy, something that fits his personality. So it has been ages since I've been to Cedar Point in Ohio, Sandusky, I believe, and fantastic place. I always loved it as a kid. I if the only way to get back there was to take a ride with Biscuits and to ride the rides with Biscuits, I think I would take that opportunity to to go back and relive a bit of my childhood.
You could drive in the monster truck on the way there. But
That would
Justin, what
happen.
if you arrive there and they lock the gate on you, and while you're inside, you realize everyone there is currently wearing a ball gag?
Well, you see, that's the best part. That's what the monster truck is for, because we could just use that to power right through those gates and maybe find a different bit of entertainment that would be hopefully more amenable to both of us.
Excellent. Would Biscuit's truck, what would you think he'd have one of those big pair of nuts that hangs down from the back of his truck or not? I don't know if that'd be his style.
He doesn't seem like the type.
Yeah.
He seems like a big softy. He wouldn't, unless he was doing it just like for the lulls. I don't think he would go in
Yeah,
for that.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. All right, everybody. This has been another episode here of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing, the Fawn Pod, the Fawn Cast. This has been Cody and Justin, and we will grant you all adieu. We will see you all on the next episode. Take care.
Have a good night, everyone.